The recruitment center on Station Nexus Prime buzzed with the usual chaos of 100 different species, trying to prove they belonged in the Galactic Defense Corps. Commander Zara Collins watched from the observation deck, her human eyes scanning the mess below with practiced indifference. 3 years of running this facility had taught her that most recruits fell into two categories: the overconfident idiots who thought they knew everything, and the terrified rookies who would wash out before their first real mission. Today's batch looked particularly promising, which, in Zara's experience, meant they would be particularly disappointing. "Another group of glory seekers," muttered Sergeant Marcus Webb, joining her at the railing. The stocky human had been her right hand since she took command, and his cynicism matched her own perfectly. "Look at that Vorthack over there, flexing his mandibles like he's already conquered half the galaxy." Zara followed his gaze to a 7-foot-tall, insectoid creature whose chitinous armor gleamed under the harsh station lights. The Vorthack species was known for their aggressive nature and complete lack of social awareness. This one seemed to embody both traits perfectly. "Credit says he causes trouble within the hour," Marcus said. "No bet. That's like wagering the sun will rise tomorrow." Zara's voice carried the weight of too many similar situations. "Let's get this circus started." The training floor fell silent as Zara's boots echoed across the metal grating. 50 pairs of alien eyes turned toward her, representing 20 different species from across the galaxy. Some showed respect, others curiosity, and a few displayed the kind of arrogance that made her job infinitely more difficult. "Welcome to hell," she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the massive space. "For the next 6 weeks, this station will be your home, your school, and your nightmare. Some of you think you're warriors. Some of you think you're heroes. Most of you are wrong on both counts." A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the group. The Vorthack, whose name tag read Klaxon, clicked his mandibles in what might have been amusement or annoyance. "The Galactic Defense Corps doesn't need heroes," Zara continued. "Heroes get people killed. We need soldiers who follow orders, think before they act, and understand that survival depends on the being next to you, not the one in the mirror." She began walking through the ranks, her eyes cataloging each recruit, a nervous Zenthari whose scales shifted colors with anxiety. 2 Corvin twins who stood so close they might have been joined at the hip. A human female who looked barely old enough to be here. "Wait." Zara stopped, studying the young woman more carefully. Red hair pulled back in a regulation bun, green eyes that held more steel than most veterans, and a stance that suggested military training. But there was something else, something that made Zara's protective instincts flare. "Name and homeworld," she said. "Recruit Elena Rodriguez, sir. Earth Luna Colony 7. Age? 19 standard years, sir." 19. Christ, she was practically a child. But the way she held herself, the way her eyes tracked movement around the room, without seeming to, suggested she was far from helpless. Prior experience? 2 years Colonial Defense Force, sir. Specialist in close quarters combat and tactical assessment. That explained the confidence. CDF training was notoriously brutal, designed to prepare colonists for everything from pirate raids to wildlife encounters that could tear through powered armor like tissue paper. "Very good, Rodriguez." Zara moved on, but made a mental note to keep an eye on the young woman. Something about her presence had shifted the dynamic in the room. Several of the male recruits were already stealing glances, and Klaxon's mandibles were clicking in a rhythm that suggested interest. The first week passed without major incident. The recruits threw themselves into the training, with varying degrees of success. Elena Rodriguez proved to be exactly what her record suggested: skilled, disciplined, and utterly fearless. She topped the marksmanship scores, dominated the hand-to-hand combat exercises, and showed a tactical mind that impressed even Marcus. She also attracted attention, like a magnet attracts metal shavings. "It's getting ridiculous," Marcus said during their weekly assessment meeting. "Half the male recruits are tripping over themselves trying to impress her, and the other half are resentful that a human female is outperforming them." Zara nodded, reviewing the training footage on her tablet. Elena moved through the obstacle course with fluid precision, her movements economical and deadly. But it wasn't her performance that worried Zara. It was the way certain recruits watched her when they thought no one was looking. particularly Klaxon. The Vord hack had started subtle at first, positioning himself near Elena during briefings, volunteering for joint exercises, offering advice that she clearly didn't need and politely declined. But as the days passed, his behavior became more aggressive. "He's testing boundaries," Zara observed, watching as Klaxon deliberately blocked Elena's path to the armory. The young woman simply went around him, her expression never changing, but Zara caught the slight tensing of her shoulders. "Want me to have a word with him?" Marcus asked. "Not yet. She can handle herself, and interfering might undermine her standing with the other recruits. But keep monitoring. Vord hacks don't take rejection well." The breaking point came during Week 2, during a combat simulation in the station's holographic training facility. The scenario was straightforward: a rescue mission on a hostile planet with limited visibility and unknown enemy positions. The recruits were divided into teams of 5, with Elena assigned as the communications specialist for Team Bravo. Klaxon had managed to get himself assigned as Team Bravo's heavy weapon specialist. Zara watched from the observation booth as the simulation began. The artificial environment flickered to life around the recruits, transforming the training bay into a fog-shrouded alien forest. Elena immediately began coordinating with her teammates, her voice calm and professional over the comm system. "Bravo team, this is Rodriguez. I'm reading movement signatures 2 clicks northeast of our position. Recommend we establish overwatch before advancing." "Negative." Klaxon's voice crackled over the comm. "We should charge their position while we have surprise." "That's not the mission parameters," Elena replied. "We're here to extract civilians, not engage in a firefight. The human female lacks warrior instincts," Klaxon announced to his teammates. "Perhaps she should remain behind while the real soldiers handle this." Marcus leaned forward in his chair. "Here we go." Elena's response was measured, professional. "I understand the concerns, Klaxon, but tactical doctrine clearly states that in rescue scenarios, civilian safety takes precedence over aggressive action. Doctrine written by beings who have never faced real combat," Klaxon scoffed. "On Vordhack Prime, we do not hide behind regulations when action is required." The simulation continued, but the tension was palpable even through the holographic displays. Elena maintained her composure, continuing to coordinate the team's movements with military precision. But Klaxon grew increasingly agitated as his suggestions were overruled by sound tactical thinking. The breaking point came when Team Bravo located the simulated civilians. Elena was coordinating the evacuation when Klaxon decided to take matters into his own hands. "Enough of this cautious approach," he declared, moving toward Elena's position. "If the human female cannot lead properly, then I will take command." "Klaxon, return to your position," Elena ordered, her voice sharp with authority. "You're compromising the mission." "I am improving it," the Vordhack replied, reaching out with one clawed hand to grab her arm. "Stand aside and let a real warrior work." What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but Zara would replay it in her mind for months afterward. The moment Klaxon's claw made contact with Elena's arm, the young woman moved. Her free hand snapped up, fingers extended, striking the nerve cluster just below his primary shoulder joint. The Vordhack's grip loosened involuntarily as pain shot through his arm. Elena immediately pivoted, using his own momentum against him, and drove her elbow into the same shoulder joint with surgical precision. The crack of chitin splitting was audible even through the comm system. Klaxon screamed, a sound like grinding metal that sent several recruits diving for cover. He stumbled backward, his dominant arm hanging useless at his side, greenish fluid seeping through the fractures in his natural armor. Elena stood perfectly still, her expression calm, as if she had simply swatted a particularly persistent insect. "Computer and simulation," Zara announced. "All recruits report to the medical bay for evaluation." The holographic forest faded, leaving 50 shocked faces staring at Elena and the writhing Vordhack. Dr. Kalara, the station's Zen-3 medical officer, rushed forward with her team to attend to Klaxon's injury. "Compound fracture of the primary shoulder assembly," she announced after a quick examination. "The joint capsule has been completely destroyed. He'll need surgery and at least 6 weeks of regeneration therapy." Elena stood at attention as Zara approached. There was no defiance in her posture, no satisfaction at having injured another recruit, just professional readiness to accept whatever consequences her actions might bring. "Rodriguez," Zara said quietly. "My office. Now." The walk to the commander's office was silent, but Zara could feel the weight of 50 pairs of eyes following them. Word would spread quickly through the station. The human female had just ended a Vorthack warrior's career with 2 precise strikes. Once the office door sealed behind them, Zara gestured to a chair. Elena remained standing. "Sir, I accept full responsibility for my actions during the simulation. Recruit Klaxon's injury was the result of my response to unauthorized physical contact." "Unauthorized physical contact," Zara repeated. "That's a very clinical way to describe what just happened. Sir, he grabbed my arm without permission and attempted to physically remove me from my assigned position. Colonial Defense Force training protocols are very specific about responding to such situations." Zara studied the young woman's face. There was no boasting, no attempt to justify excessive force. Just a simple statement of fact delivered with military precision. "Elena," she said, dropping the formal rank structure, "what you just did to Klaxon, that wasn't standard CDF training. That was something else entirely." For the first time since entering the office, Elena's composure cracked slightly. "Sir, I've seen CDF combat training. Hell, I've been through it myself. What you did required knowledge of Vorthack anatomy that isn't included in any standard curriculum. You knew exactly where to hit him and how much force to apply." Elena was quiet for a long moment, her green eyes fixed on a point somewhere past Zara's shoulder. "My father," she said finally, "was part of the first contact team when the Vorthacks joined the Galactic Council. He spent 3 years studying their biology, their culture, their weaknesses. He used to say that understanding your allies was just as important as understanding your enemies." "And he taught you about their anatomy?" "He taught me about everyone's anatomy, sir. Humans weren't exactly welcome in the galactic community when we first joined. Dad figured it was better to be prepared for trouble than surprised by it." Zara nodded slowly. It made sense. The early years of human integration had been rocky, with several incidents of violence based on misunderstanding or outright prejudice. A father preparing his daughter for a hostile universe would naturally want to give her every advantage. "The question now," Zara said, "is what happens next? Klaxon's injury is going to require significant medical intervention. His military career might be over before it started." "I understand, sir." "Do you? Because I'm not sure you realize what you've just accomplished. Every recruit in that simulation saw a 19-year-old human female disable a fully grown Vorthack warrior in seconds. Some will be impressed, others will be terrified, and a few will see you as a threat that needs to be eliminated." Elena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sir, are you suggesting I should have allowed Recruit Klaxon to continue his unauthorized contact?" "I'm suggesting that your response, while tactically sound, has just painted a target on your back. The other recruits are going to react to what they saw, and not all of those reactions will be positive." A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Zara glanced at her terminal and sighed. "Dr. Kalar confirms that Klaxon's shoulder joint has been completely destroyed. The damage is so precise that it appears almost surgical. She's recommending a full medical discharge." Elena said nothing, but Zara could see the weight of that information settling on her shoulders. "There's something else you need to know," Zara continued. "Vorthacks have a cultural concept called blood debt. When one of their warriors is permanently injured in combat, their family can demand compensation from the warrior responsible. Compensation? Usually ritual combat to the death." The color drained from Elena's face, but her voice remained steady. "I see. Now, since this happened during a training exercise on a Federation facility, there are protocols that prevent such demands from being enforced. But that doesn't mean Klaxon's family won't try, or that other Vorthacks won't see this as a matter of honor." Zara leaned back in her chair, studying the young woman before her. Elena Rodriguez was clearly more than she appeared to be. The question was whether that would be enough to keep her alive in the complex political environment of the Galactic Defense Corps. I'm going to ask you directly. Elena, is there anything else about your background I should know? Any other surprises that might come up during the next 5 weeks of training? Elena was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she spoke. Sir, my father wasn't just part of the first contact team. He was a team leader. And after the official contact was established, he spent another 5 years working as a cultural liaison with 12 different species. He didn't just teach me about alien anatomy. He taught me about alien psychology, alien social structures, and alien ways of war. Christ, Zara muttered, you're not just a soldier. You're a walking encyclopedia of xenobiology. Yes, sir. And you didn't think to mention this during recruitment? Sir, I was recruited for my combat skills and tactical training. I didn't see the relevance of academic knowledge. Zara rubbed her temples. This was becoming more complicated by the minute. A human with extensive knowledge of alien cultures and combat techniques was exactly the kind of recruit the GDC needed. It was also exactly the kind of recruit who would attract the wrong sort of attention from species that still harbor resentment toward humanity. Elena, I'm going to be frank with you. What happened today changes everything. You just demonstrated that humans are capable of neutralizing supposedly superior alien warriors with minimal effort. Some species are going to see that as a threat to their perceived dominance. I understand, sir. I don't think you do. This isn't about military protocol or training regulations anymore. This is about galactic politics and species pride. You just humiliated one of the supposedly most dangerous warrior races in the galaxy, and word is going to spread. Elena straightened her shoulders. Sir, what are your orders? Zara smiled grimly. There it was, the response of a true soldier. Not self-pity or complaint about fairness, but a simple request for direction in a difficult situation. Your orders are to complete your training as scheduled. But from now on, you'll be taking additional instruction in diplomatic protocols and interspecies relations. If you're going to be a target, you need to understand exactly what you're facing. Yes, sir. And Elena, next time someone grabs you without permission, maybe try a warning first. Save the anatomical precision for when words won't work. For the first time since entering the office, Elena smiled. I'll keep that in mind, sir. News of the incident spread through Nexus Prime faster than a plasma fire in an oxygen-rich environment. By evening, every being on the station had heard some version of the story, and by morning, the tale had grown to mythical proportions. According to the mess hall gossip, Elena Rodriguez had single-handedly defeated 3 Vorthak warriors while blindfolded and speaking ancient Earth poetry. Marcus found Zara in the observation deck, watching the morning training session with unusual intensity. The overnight reports are interesting, he said, handing her a data tablet. We've had 17 formal complaints about Rodriguez from various species representatives, 12 requests to transfer her to advanced combat training immediately, and 1 marriage proposal from a Corvin diplomat who apparently finds deadly efficiency attractive. Wonderful, Zara muttered, not taking her eyes off the training floor. What about retaliation attempts? Nothing direct yet, but I've noticed some unusual groupings. The Zen-3 contingent has been holding private meetings, and 3 of the Drachma recruits requested room, changes to get closer to Rodriguez's quarters. Below them, Elena moved through the morning exercises with her usual precision, apparently unaware of the attention she was drawing. But Zara noticed the way other recruits gave her a wider berth than before, and how conversation stopped when she approached. She's going to need protection, Marcus said quietly. She is protection, Zara replied. The question is whether that's going to be enough. The first real test came during week 3, in the form of a Drachma recruit named Vex Thornscale. The Drachma were reptilian beings known for their predatory nature and complete inability to forgive perceived slights. Vex had been friends with Klaxon, and his cold yellow eyes had been tracking Elena's movements ever since the incident. The confrontation happened in the armory during the daily weapons maintenance period. Elena was cleaning her assigned pulse rifle when Vex approached, flanked by 2 other Drachma recruits. Human, Vex said, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. We need to discuss your attack on Warrior Klaxon. Elena looked up calmly from her weapon. There's nothing to discuss. The incident report was filed and reviewed. Case closed. Not closed, Vex hissed. Klaxon was a respected warrior. His injury brings shame to all who train with him. Then perhaps you should train harder, Elena replied, returning to her weapon maintenance. The casual dismissal sent a ripple of shock through the nearby recruits. Several stopped what they were doing to watch the exchange, sensing that violence was about to erupt. Vex's scales darkened with rage. You dare mock the honor of Drachma warriors? I dare point out that honor isn't earned by association, Elena said, her voice remaining perfectly level. If Klaxon's injury embarrasses you, that says more about your own insecurities than it does about his combat skills. Marcus, who had been monitoring the situation from the security booth, started moving toward the armory, but Zara held up a hand, stopping him. Let's see how she handles this, she said. Vex stepped closer, looming over Elena's seated position. Stand up, Deathworlder. Face me properly. Elena finished reassembling her rifle before looking up. Is that an official challenge? It is a demand for satisfaction. Satisfaction for what exactly? You weren't involved in the training exercise. You weren't injured. You have no personal stake in what happened between me and Klaxon. The logic was flawless, but logic rarely mattered when pride and species prejudice were involved. Vex's companions moved to flank Elena, cutting off her easy escape routes. The stake is respect, Vex snarled. You have shown that humans consider themselves superior to other species. This cannot stand. Elena finally stood, her rifle held casually at her side. She was nearly a foot shorter than any of the Drachma, but her presence seemed to fill the space around her. Let me explain something to you, Vex, she said, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. What happened to Klaxon wasn't about species superiority. It was about him putting his hands on me, without permission, and trying to override my authority in a combat situation. Any being of any species who makes that mistake will get the same response. Threats, Vex hissed. More proof of human arrogance. Not threats. Educational information. The tension in the armory was thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. Other recruits had backed away, giving the confrontation space, while positioning themselves to watch the outcome. Elena stood perfectly still, her grip relaxed on her weapon, but Zara could see the subtle shift in her stance that suggested she was preparing for action. Perhaps, said a new voice in the armory entrance, this conversation would be more productive in a different setting. Everyone turned to see Dr. Kalara approaching, her scaled hands clasped behind her back in a Zenthari gesture of peaceful intent. The medical officer's presence immediately changed the dynamic in the room. Dr. Kalara, Vex said, inclining his head respectfully. We were simply discussing training protocols with a human. I see, Kalara replied, her large eyes taking the positioning of the 3 Drachma. And does this discussion require you to surround recruit Rodriguez in a potentially threatening manner? We meant no threat, one of Vex's companions said quickly. We were merely curious about her techniques. Curious, Elena repeated, a hint of amusement in her voice. Is that what we're calling it? Kalara moved smoothly between the opposing groups, her medical authority providing neutral ground. Perhaps your curiosity will be better served through formal training channels. I believe Commander Collins has arranged additional instruction sessions specifically to address interspecies combat techniques. Vex's eyes narrowed. Additional instruction? Oh, yes. Kalara continued conversationally. Recruit Rodriguez will be demonstrating proper defensive techniques for situations involving unauthorized physical contact. I understand the curriculum will cover responses appropriate for 17 different species anatomies. The color drained from the Drachma scales. The implication was clear. Elena wasn't just lucky with Klaxon. She had specific knowledge about how to disable any species represented in the core. That's right, Elena said, her smile sharp as a blade. 17 different ways to end a career in 3 seconds or less. Amazing what you can learn when your father spends his life studying alien anatomy. Vex backed away slowly, his predatory confidence evaporating. This conversation is concluded, he muttered, gesturing for his companions to follow. As the Drachma filed out of the armory, Dr. Kalara turned to Elena with what might have been approval. Cleverly handled, she said quietly. Though I should mention that there are actually 23 species in the current core roster, not 17. Elena's grin widened. I know, but saying 23 might have seemed like showing off. Word of Elena's second confrontation spread even faster than the first, but this time the reaction was different. Instead of fear or resentment, many of the recruits began showing something that looked suspiciously like respect. The human who could end careers with surgical precision was also the human who preferred psychological warfare to actual violence. It was exactly the kind of reputation that attracted the wrong sort of attention from the galaxy's more dangerous elements. The message came through official channels during Week 4, coded with diplomatic seals that made Zara's stomach clench with dread. She read it twice before calling Elena to her office, then read it a third time, hoping the words would somehow change. They didn't. "Sit down, Elena," she said when the young woman arrived. "We have a problem." Elena took the offered chair, her expression alert but calm. For weeks of training had honed her already sharp instincts to a razor's edge, and she could clearly sense the tension in Zara's voice. "How big a problem?" she asked. "The kind that could get you killed," Zara replied bluntly. "I just received a formal communication from the Vorthak High Council. They're invoking ancient combat laws to demand satisfaction for Klaxon's injury. You said Federation protocols prevented that. Federation protocols prevent them from demanding ritual combat on Federation territory. They can't touch you here. But the moment you leave the station, you become fair game for any Vorthak warrior who wants to restore their species' honor." Elena was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. "So I'm stuck here forever?" "Not forever. The combat debt expires after one standard year, if unclaimed. But that's 12 months of being confined to the station while your career stagnates. There has to be another option." Zara sighed. "There is. You can accept the challenge and face their champion in formal combat. If you win, the debt is satisfied and you're free to continue your career. If you lose, well, that solves the problem permanently. And if I refuse, then you spend the next year in protective custody, followed by a career in whatever backwater posting is willing to take someone with a Vorthak death mark." Elena stood and walked to the office window, looking out at the vast expanse of space beyond the station. Stars glittered like diamonds against the endless black, each one representing worlds and civilizations that would be closed to her if she couldn't resolve the situation. "What do you know about their champion?" she asked. "His name is Krex Bonecrusher, which should tell you everything you need to know about his combat philosophy. He's 7.5 feet tall, weighs about 400 pounds, and has never lost a formal challenge. His preferred weapons are traditional Vorthak war claws, which are basically razor-sharp metal extensions of his natural claws. Reach advantage, weight advantage, natural armor, and weapons designed for his anatomy." Elena mused. "Anything working in my favor? You're faster, more flexible, and considerably smarter. Plus, Vorthak warriors rely heavily on intimidation and brute force. They're not used to opponents who fight with precision instead of passion." Elena turned back to Zara. "When and where?" "Elena, you don't have to do this. A year of protective custody isn't the end of the world." "Commander, with respect, a year of hiding isn't living. It's just postponing the inevitable. If I don't face this now, I'll spend my entire career looking over my shoulder for the next Vorthak who decides human success is an insult to their pride." Zara nodded slowly. She had expected this response, but had hoped Elena might choose a safer path. The young woman's father had clearly raised her with a warrior's mindset. Face your problems head-on, regardless of the odds. The challenge is set for next week, on neutral ground at the Kepler station. Standard arena combat, with representatives from all major species present as witnesses. The rules are simple, last being standing wins. And if I lose? If you lose, the Galactic Defense Corps will mourn the death of one of its most promising recruits, and I'll spend the rest of my career wondering if I should have locked you in protective custody regardless of your protests." Elena smiled, the expression carrying none of the warmth that had shown in their previous conversations. This was the smile of someone who had just accepted a challenge to mortal combat and found the prospect more exciting than terrifying. "Then I guess I better not lose." The week that followed was unlike anything Nexus Prime had ever experienced. Word of the upcoming combat spread to the galaxy's military networks like wildfire, drawing attention from species representatives, military observers, and combat enthusiasts from across known space. The betting pools reached astronomical figures, with odds heavily favoring the Vorthack champion. Elena spent the time in intensive preparation, working with Marcus to study every available recording of Krex Bonecrusher's previous fights. The Vorthack champion was exactly what his reputation suggested, a devastating close-quarters fighter who overwhelmed opponents with speed, strength, and vicious brutality. He's got 43 confirmed kills in formal combat, Marcus reported during one of their strategy sessions. All of them ended within the first 2 minutes of the fight. How? Elena asked, studying the holographic replay of Bonecrusher's most recent victory, usually by grabbing his opponent and literally tearing them apart. Vorthack war claws can cut through most personal armor like it's made of paper. So staying out of his reach is priority 1. Priority 1 through 10, Marcus agreed. The moment he gets those claws on you, it's over. Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on something else in the combat footage. Marcus. Look at his footwork during the Zen-3 fight. See how he favors his left side when he charges. Marcus replayed the section she indicated. Old injury? Maybe just a preference. But it's a pattern. Every charge starts with a step forward on the left foot, and he always tries to position his opponent on his right side for the killing blow. You thinking of exploiting that? Elena smiled that dangerous smile again. I'm thinking of exploiting everything. The day of the challenge arrived with all the ceremony and spectacle that formal combat demanded. Kepler Station's main arena had been configured for the event, with seating for over 1,000 spectators and sensor arrays to broadcast the fight across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to witness what many considered a historical moment. The first time a human would face a Vorthack champion in formal combat. Elena stood in the preparation chamber, adjusting the fit of her combat armor and checking her chosen weapons for the 100th time. She had selected a standard Federation combat blade and a defensive gauntlet, both designed for speed and precision rather than raw power. Last chance to reconsider, Zara said, joining her in the chamber. I've got a fast ship standing by to take you to the Outer Rim. You could disappear for a year, let this whole thing blow over, and spend the rest of my life running for my reputation? Elena shook her head. No, thank you. Besides, I have a feeling this is going to be more educational than dangerous. Educational? Elena's smile was sharp as her blade. I'm about to demonstrate to the entire galaxy exactly why you don't grab a Deathworlder without permission. Consider it a public service announcement. The arena erupted in sound as the combatants entered from opposite sides of the circular combat space. Krex Bonecrusher stalked forward with the confidence of someone who had never faced a real challenge, his war claws gleaming under the bright lights. He was even more impressive in person, 7.5 feet of muscle and chitin, with mandibles that clicked ominously as he surveyed his opponent. Elena looked tiny by comparison, a small human figure dwarfed by the alien giant's presence. But those watching closely would have noticed that she moved with the fluid grace of a predator, her eyes never leaving her opponent as she calculated distances and angles. The challenge is issued and accepted, announced the Arbiter, a neutral Galactic Council representative. Combat will continue until one participant yields, is incapacitated, or dies. Begin. Bonecrusher charged immediately, exactly as Elena had expected. The Vorthack champion crossed the arena floor in 3 massive strides, his war claws spread wide to prevent his opponent from dodging. It was a classic intimidation tactic. Overwhelm the enemy with speed and aggression before they could formulate a defense. It was also exactly what Elena had been hoping for. Instead of retreating or attempting to dodge sideways, Elena did something that stunned every observer in the arena. She charged directly at the approaching giant, dropping into a slide that carried her between his legs while her combat blade traced a precise arc across the back of his left knee. The blade found a gap in his chitinous armor with surgical precision, severing the tendons that controlled his primary leg joint. Bonecrusher's roar of pain and fury shook the arena as he stumbled, his left leg collapsing under his massive weight. But the Vorthack champion was far from finished. He spun with surprising speed, his war claws seeking Elena's position. She wasn't there. Elena had rolled out her slide and come up on Bone Crusher's blind side, exactly where Marcus had taught her to position herself during their strategy sessions. The Vorthack's damaged leg prevented him from turning quickly, giving her precious seconds to study his posture and plan her next move. Stand still and die with honor, human, Bone Crusher snarled, swiping at her with his claws. Honor, Elena replied conversationally, easily avoiding the clumsy attack. You mean like the honor Klaxon showed when he grabbed me without permission? The reminder of what had started this whole situation sent Bone Crusher into a rage. He abandoned all pretense of tactical thinking and threw himself at Elena with mindless fury, his war claws seeking to tear her apart through sheer violence. It was the worst possible mistake he could have made. Elena had spent her entire life learning about alien anatomy from a father who understood that knowledge was survival. She knew exactly where every major nerve cluster, joint vulnerability, and structural weakness could be found on a Vorthack warrior. More importantly, she knew how to exploit them. The fight that followed was less a battle than a surgical demonstration. Each time Bone Crusher attacked, Elena was already moving, her blade finding gaps in his armor with devastating precision. A cut here to disable his right arm, a strike there to damage his primary breathing apparatus, a precise thrust to the nerve cluster controlling his tail. Within minutes, the supposedly unstoppable Vorthack champion was reduced to a wounded, gasping giant whose war claws hung useless at his sides.